Johnson grass, if you're familiar with that, it's related to Johnson grass. It's you can get 1,200 gallons per acre on that.
Is that tropical too?
No, it grows right down the road here.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What about chips?
Chips is another one. Yeah.
Do you know what that proportion would be, how much more efficient than corn would be?
Not particularly. No, I haven't really studied that much, but there is a way to do it out of wood chips. And what I understand, the methanol production is more efficient with wood chips than ethanol, which is another type of alcohol.
A speaker in a program sponsored by the Sierra Club remarked the other day very critically about it, and said that we can fail a lot of
Yeah, there's a lot of controversy about it.
I mentioned controversy, yeah.
I put this up here because this is my least favorite of all the ones. But I wanted to include it just to show you what the issues were about it.
Our president is pushing that.
Yeah, he's pushing the switchgrass thing probably because he has a few hundred acres of switchgrass somewhere in Texas. I don't know if that has anything to do with it or not. Hydrogen, this one is one of the few that's not quite ready for prime time. It's the most abundant element in the universe. The byproduct of burning hydrogen fuel is water. Hydrogen and oxygen combine, and the waste material is water, that's it. The problem with it is storage medium. You have to have a very, very high pressure tank to get enough hydrogen to reach the 250, 300 mile trip standard that most automotive industry has set. And a tank under that much pressure, we're talking like 12,000 PSI, and on up from there. You wouldn't want to get hit going down the road with a 12,000 PSI tank on your rear. Still a few decades away from being viable commercially, barring any great breakthroughs in the near future. South Carolina has set itself up to be the Texas of hydrogen, is the way that what's that guy up in the governor's office, what's his name? Mark Furman said, what is his name?
Sanford.
Mark Sanford.
Mark Sanford.
Mark Sanford, okay. Yeah. Anyway, he said that he wants South Carolina to be the Texas of hydrogen.
Well, Chuck, with water being the byproduct of this hydrogen fuel system,
Yeah.
is it possible that that could help alleviate the water shortages that are bound to come along in years in the future?
Well, not really, because you have to split it off to start with. Depends on the process. That's the way that. Okay, I'll give you a little basic review here. You can split the hydrogen off from the water. It takes about 9 times as much energy to split it off as you get back. Now, that's the bad news. The good news is that if you did it with solar, sunlight is free. The government hasn't found a way to make us pay for sunlight yet. So if you could figure out a way to do it with sunlight, then that 9 times as much energy doesn't become an issue. But you split the water off, you split the hydrogen off from the water, and when you burn it, you get the water back. The other issue with that, with the 9 times as much energy, that's going to be true of just about any alternative fuel. You're going to require more energy going in than you get back out. The same is true with fossil fuels, except that the energy that was expended to make the fossil fuels was over a period of a couple million years. So we don't notice that when we dig it up out of the ground. We'll notice it when we run out of fossil fuels, and then we have to bury a bunch of plant and animal material in the ground for another couple million years to get it back. So, hybrid combines internal combustion with electricity. It improves efficiency because it's an electric car basically, and the motor charges the batteries. But it still relies on fossil fuel technology right now. They do have a thing called a plug-in hybrid that can get up to 100 miles per gallon, and that's basically you plug in the battery charger when you're not driving the car, and it charges the batteries, and that kind of supplements what the actual gas or diesel engine does.
In the early 1900s, Studebaker was a car company called Pope. In 1903, in most of the cities in this country, taxi cabs and buses and trucks were run by electric electricity.
Yeah, I mean, San Francisco is.
And there was the electric car, who killed the electric car.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting, and they switched them on.
But the plug-in, if you want to use coal for electricity.
Yeah, that was-
That's.
That's another thing with the plug-in, it's only as clean as the power source upstream. So if you're getting your electricity at your home from a coal burning factory, then you're back to square one basically. One of the alternatives would be if you had a home power charging station, like a little solar panel thing that you could, or a wind generator, or just buy your energy from a clean utility company.
Now Chuck, the present hybrids, renew their own battery while they're moving, correct?
Yeah.
But is that battery, I understand, limited in how long they can be used until it has to be replaced?
The factory says 10 years. Yeah.
10 years.
But these hybrids are so new, they don't know for sure.
That's the
That's just what
downside.
they, yeah.
My warranty is 10 years.
Yeah, the warranty's 10 years.
But it's
And
another
another
The
thing,
principle is great, being renewed while it's moving.
yeah.
It'd be great.
Now, the thing about that too is the batteries that once the 10 years ago, when you're not using them in the car anymore, you can also still use them for home solar, battery backup. If you need the storage medium for home solar, they're still good enough for that. But they're not good enough to get out and go 70 miles an hour on the interstate.
Oh.
Does anybody here have a hybrid right now? Who has the most mileage?
I guess, well, the best I did was 55.2.
I mean, how many miles in your car?
Oh, between 25 and 30,000.
And what kind is it?
It's a Toyota Prius. And I average between 48 and 50 miles per gallon on every tank.
It's in town and out of town.
That's in and out.
That's what it's reason. It's in town.
I've got over 80,000 miles on my hybrid four-wheel drive course.
No problem with that or something.
It's about 30 miles a gallon, about 100 gallon now.
Okay, good. Biofuel hybrids, that's my big thing is that, speed up. Biofuel hybrid is you use either ethanol or biodiesel to run the engine instead of the petroleum-based stuff. Electric, we were talking about that earlier. They can be recharged with standalone or wind or solar generator. Only viable for short distances with current technology.
Chuck, is that coming back in companies starting to electric again?
Yes, this car here was 2005. They're still having problems with distance and range because you can only go like 40 miles an hour for 150 to 200 miles. And most of them, now they do have some that can go faster than that if you don't mind shelling out $100,000 to $150,000.
Why were they so successful in California to release electric? There was a big controversy over that.
Yeah, I think that's just because of the short range and all that. Yeah.
Solar cell, the technology of the silicon wafer of solar cell produce most of the electricity in the red part of the spectrum.
Yeah.
But they're working on using different chemical for up the
Yeah.
lower the wavelength, like yellow, green, and
So,
blue.
yeah, some of them are into the UV spectrum too, that looks promising. But if you can use the full spectrum, you generate more power.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the solar cars, the onboard solar there, this one on the bottom actually is onboard solar. The solar panels run the car, there's no battery in there. It's basically a glorified bicycle. This is built for competition only, it's not for street use. This one here, the panels actually charge a battery that's inside the car, which is more viable than this because, if you plan on going anywhere at night, want some batteries in there somewhere. And of course, if you add batteries, you're adding weight, which means that it's a trade-off.
And that's the thing about those solar cells, they're very fragile.
Yeah, they're very fragile too, so if you get hit, you would have to have your whole car rebuilt, basically.
Can't even sit out on it.
Yeah. The best solution is to have, some kind of a solar station, if you're going to use solar, to charge batteries and back the car into it at night, maybe a garage with solar panels on the roof, charge it up that way. Biodiesel, there's a place up in Pittsburgh, North Carolina, that teach you how to make your own biodiesel. And you just go to the restaurant and you get the fast food fat grease out of the fryer, take the glycerin out of it and run it in your diesel car. I don't look for diesel prices to get much more than $4.50 to $5 a gallon, because at that point biodiesel gets competitive. So if that's any good news at all, if you have a diesel engine. The actual diesel engine was designed to run on peanut oil. Rudolph Diesel designed it to run on peanut oil, and they just used diesel because it was a cheap byproduct of the distillation process for gasoline. It does require a vehicle with a diesel engine.
My son-in-law just put $120 into his diesel truck. Can I tell him he can use peanut oil instead?
No, you might have to make your own. The peanut oil, they take the glycerin out of it with a catalyst and turn it into biofuel. The only thing, in the wintertime, you wouldn't want to run straight vegetable oil in your car because it would gel on the lines. But in the summertime, it shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, you can do
I
that.
was kidding.
Yeah, you can do that, straight vegetable oil. I check with the manufacturer just to make sure first, because I don't want anybody coming back and saying, hey, you told me I could do this. Compressed air vehicles. These things are,
It's on the internet right now.
yeah, you can get them on the internet for they look like $5,000 to $6,000. They're not very expensive. The problem with them is that they're limited range, 40 miles an hour or 50 to 100 miles. They're mainly for like driving in town. If you live in New York or Greenville, you live in downtown and you want to get back and forth to your office or whatever, this would be the car. And they actually run on compressed air. So. And of course, human power. Good old bicycle. This is a quadricycle. You can, benefits are you get exercise. Only costs you about $400 or $500. The negative factors are you get exercise. And if it's raining, you're in trouble. They do have them with roofs on them. And this one here, I don't know if you can see, it has a little electric motor in the back. So if you get up to a hill, you can flip a switch on it and get up the hill. And the thing about that is when you go back down the hill, it charges the battery. So, agriculture, we got time.
Yeah, you've got till 3:30.
Oh, I got 3:30. Okay, I was thinking 3.
You didn't put walking in there. But,
Yeah, walking. Yeah, walking's good too. I forgot that one. I don't know why I forgot.
It was the exercise.
Too, it's one of my favorites.
That's the exercise thing.
Agriculture. Growing food at home reduces grocery bills. And I'm going to answer the objection that everybody has right now when I get to the bottom here. So, you have control over pesticides, herbicides, allergy control. One of the things about growing your own food at home is studies have shown that if you eat food that comes from your local environment, it boosts your immune system to deal with the local environment. So if you're eating food from California, you're fine. If you ever go to California, you have an allergy attack. But as far as we live here, it doesn't really do that much for you. Biointensive gardening techniques. John Jones and Alan Chadwick came up with this biointensive gardening. And they say that you can grow enough food for a vegan family of 4 on an eighth of an acre of land. And of course, you can your own vegetables and fruits. You can reduce your refrigeration requirements as well. The thing I hear is, well, what if you live in an apartment and things like that? I'm starting an experiment to find out. I'm gonna get 10 or 12 containers and grow them in the house and see how many vegetables I can grow using this biointensive stuff from May until, say, August, just to see how much food you can actually grow in 10 or 12 containers inside the house.
In the house?
Yeah. It's my wife, by the way.
Wait, in our house? Have you ever seen those tomato worms?
Thanks for bringing that up.
Maybe I should have taught this in classes. But that's John Jevons' book there. It's possibly one of the longest titles I've ever seen. But if you're interested in Bible, take some learning. Vegetarianism, or veganism, either way you want to call it. When I researched the chapter on veganism in the book, the American Dietary Association and the Dietitians of Canada, they've done all these studies, and I'm not going to go in depth in all of this, but some of the health benefits of just eating vegetables and fruits: 31% lower cardiovascular, 42% less hypertension, 54%. Okay, I got that backwards. Cancer. Non-vegetarians have a 54% increased risk for prostate and 88% increased for colorectal. Dementia. You're twice as likely to develop dementia if you eat meat. Diverticular disease, gallstones. Now, the environmental costs of meat eating. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations did this study called, the study was called Livestock's Long Shadow. It takes up to 1,000 pounds of water to produce 1 pound of beef. And Americans who eat meat are responsible for 1.5 more tons of carbon dioxide per year than those who don't. The beef industry is responsible for about 18% of the greenhouse gas emissions just from all the machinery and cow herds and everything else that goes into it. Rapid deforestation of rain for us is largely due to the beef industry for grazing lands. To feed one cow, you need 2.5 acres, whereas to feed a family of 4 vegans, you need 1/8 of an acre. And just to show you what the deforestation looks like, this was what. That's what the United States, all the green area is forest. That's what the United States looked like in 1620, and this is 1850, and this is 1920. I couldn't find one for past 1920.
No wonder.
Yeah, exactly. I don't really want to.
No green light.
Yeah.
Will increase.
And when I say that about the veganism or not eating meat, it doesn't mean you just have to totally give up meat altogether. If everybody, I found a study that said if everybody in the United States get 1 hamburger per week, then for that week we would save 50 million pounds of beef. Architecture. Sustainable building techniques. We already talked a little bit about the LEED program, which is the environmental design certification. A lot of the sustainable building techniques reduce the impact on the environment because a lot of them, like adobe, straw bale building, there's something called cob we'll get into in a minute. They all use materials found on the building site, clay, sand, straw, wood harvested from the building site. And they eliminate the need for deforestation for lumber because a lot of it doesn't rely on lumber. And in most, not say many cases there, but I should say most cases, they increase the home's efficiency and reduce its energy consumption. We're talking about 18% of greenhouse gases came from the meat industry. 25% come from making concrete, concrete production. 25% moving concrete around, making concrete, firing it in the kiln, all that stuff accounts for 25% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. These are some examples here. The Nader Khalil of Cal Earth, this is a technique called earth bag. Whoops. And you can see the earth bags in the background. Basically, you fill a sack full of dirt and then plaster over the outside of it.
Is that good in all climates, if you were just a dry climate?
It depends on the plaster. There's earth bag structures up at Earth Haven in Black Mountain. This is how it's done. This is, you see the bags here. his modification, earth bags, they used to use feed and seed sacks. He used a tube. That way you get that little high school pottery thing going. And then you cover it up with stucco or plaster. He uses earth plasters where in his side of California because it's a desert climate and he doesn't have to have the waterproofing. Adobe straw bale, we already talked a little bit about straw bale. It's up to an R50 insulation.
How long can that last?
Adobe?
No, straw.
Straw bale, the oldest one I found was 150 years old. So if it's built properly, it can last virtually forever as far as I know.
Last time it would be a considerable area where you wouldn't work so well, right?
May not be suitable in a humid environment.
Yeah,
It depends on how you define humid.
that's right.
The Cobb building, which is a variety of adobe, I have a friend she started building Cobb in Gulf Breeze, Florida. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Gulf Breeze. The entire island is 3 miles wide, and it's in between the ocean and the sound. So the humidity there is very high. And,
Especially in the summer.
Yeah. And I forgot what hurricane that building was hit by 2 hurricanes. The neighborhood surrounding it was not flat. Her pottery is still there.
Wow.
So, yeah, so that tells you, I mean, the walls are 2 feet thick, so. There's some adobe and straw bale pictures there. Well, the reason I put this in here is to point out that straw bale looks just like adobe when you finish it. If I didn't tell you, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference between which ones were the straw bale and which ones were the adobe.
Where is the window?
They're in there. That was my bad choice of pictures. There's one over there.
There aren't too many windows.
Yeah, that's just a fault of my selection. It's not really a fault of the structure of the building. You can put as many windows as you want there. As a matter of fact, we'll see some in a minute. But this is just one of my favorite architects who works with a lot of all these techniques: straw bale building, adobe building, Cobb building. He does stained glass and puts it into there. This is an adobe structure here, and adobe and Cobb. The same thing here. That's adobe and Cobb.
What is Cobb?
Cobb is basically adobe, except you don't make bricks out of it. You just stack it on top of each other, and which is the next next subject. This is a Cobb. The word comes from the same word that we get. It's an Old English word, and the same word gob that we have. That's where the word Cobb comes from. Gob and Cobb. It's just a gob, a ball of clay, sand, and straw. It's 1 part clay, 3 parts sand, and then enough straw to make it stick together. And you take these balls and you stack them and squish them together and make a wall like that. So the difference between Cobb and adobe is that Cobb is monolithic. It's one piece. You don't have the bricks. You have this one solid piece of stuff after you squish it all together. This here is next door to Shakespeare's house. It was in Stratford on the